Aloha, everyone. This is Chesapeake Movie Thoughts, and I'm going back to the Disney classics. I'm going to do another Disney classic review, and I'm actually recording this on Memorial Day, so it's somewhat fitting that I'm up to the Disney movie that kicks off the wartime era, the World War II era for Walt Disney feature animation. It was Saludos Amigos, and okay, in talking about some of the previous Disney classics, I did go into this a little bit, but basically, World War II hit the Disney studios pretty hard. First, it cut off the European market for the release of films like Pinocchio and Bambi, so they lost out on a lot of the money they were expecting to get from the release of those movies. But then, after the U.S. enters the war, the military drafts a large number of Walt Disney's artists into the war effort, has them making training films and propaganda films and logos for army units, and just using their artistic skills to help the war effort. So a large number of his artists in his studio are busy doing that. Walt Disney still has to do something to keep the doors open. So he has to make money somehow, but he can't do anything as ambitious as some of the things that he's done before. This Saludos Amigos is the first of what they call the package films, which is a series of short films like the Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck cartoon shorts that they'd been doing. They're these short films packaged together to make a feature film. Now, in this first one, Saludos Amigos, this is probably the shortest feature film in the canon, and I think probably the shortest feature film I've ever seen that is still considered to be a feature, as it's barely over 40 minutes long, and it has about 4 shorts in it. And they're connected together with a framing device, and the framing device itself is the subject of its own documentary, which you might be interested in, called Walt and El Grupo. It was a documentary about the making of this film and then the next film, and what. Not so much the making of it, but the inspiration for it, let's say. The framing device for Saludos Amigos has to do with a trip that Walt Disney and some of his artists took touring South America to get inspiration for this film. There's a little wartime backstory behind that. It has to do with what they call the Good Neighbor program. The U.S. was encouraging good relations as much as possible with South America at the time. This is, of course, because they had the markets in Europe in Asia was the war had been shut off. They had been cut off, so they needed trading partners. So they were looking to South America for that, and also because if the war should spill over into this hemisphere, they didn't want South America siding with the Nazis, certainly. So they wanted to promote really good relations with South America, and I'm not sure whose idea it really was, but Walt Disney goes on this goodwill tour in South America, which is it has the function of they're going to look for inspiration for their next couple of animated films, which will hopefully do well in South American market as well as the North American market, since the European market is closed. So they're looking for inspiration in things that will appeal to South America, for one thing. And second of all, this is to promote America to South America as well. The United States of America to South America. So it's a lot of things riding on this tour of South America they took, and the details of all that you'll find in Walt and El Grupo. But Saludos Amigos is a very condensed version of that in the framing device. The framing device tells the story of the artist going to South America looking for inspiration, and it's a lot of live action footage captured during this trip in the framing devices in between the short films, and it it doesn't cover the all the goodwill stuff. It's just about the artists just enjoying the trip for one thing, and finding inspiration in what they run across locally. Therefore, and then to try to tie it into the short that's coming next. So it's like this little, very very general, very basic travel log that is just there to set up and hold together these animated shorts. So it's a collection of cartoons, and the first one is about Donald Duck, which I believe marks Donald Duck's first appearance in a feature film. So Mickey's already appeared in Fantasia, but Donald, I don't believe, has appeared until now. So this is Donald Duck, and it's kind of a typical Donald Duck cartoon. It's Donald Duck visiting Lake Titicaca in Peru. And it's Donald, he's being a tourist and just getting himself into trouble, basically. It's a little like like some of the Goofy cartoons of this era, because there is a narrator, which is not something that Donald usually has, but there is a narrator narrating what he's doing, and Donald, of course, is getting frustrated with the difficulties he's encountering, like with a rope bridge, and it's just like any Donald Duck cartoon. They're always very charming and funny, but they're not heavy on story. It's mostly there to just string together some gags, and yeah, it's a pretty typical Donald Duck cartoon. And then the next cartoon is about Pedro, a little airplane, kind of like Cars style, like Pixar's Cars. Although this is way before Pixar and Cars ever existed, but this is a little plain little living plane cartoon character who has to take he's a mail plane. He delivers the mail. But he's like a little baby mail plane, and his father is sick, so he has to deliver the mail. And it was inspired by the dangerous mountains that they had been flying over. Little, not a whole lot to that short, but it's kind of interesting to see like this kind of Cars concept. If you're familiar with Disney and Pixar's Cars idea, Cars and planes, it's a spin-off. To see that idea is not entirely new. To see that there was a animated features that use pretty much that same idea as far back as the 1940s. So that was, but not probably the most forgettable short in the whole thing. Then there is a Goofy short. Goofy is my favorite cartoon character, so I'm kind of biased. But this is the highlight of the movie for me. It's El Gaucho Goofy short, and it's basically this is the part of the movie where they're in Argentina, and they're discovering the lifestyle of the local gauchos, which are kind of like cowboys, and they were comparing them to cowboys. And they say, well, let's do a cartoon about taking a cowboy out of Texas, and they cast Goofy as that cowboy, and having him become a gaucho for a short time. So and again we have the narrator like a lot of the Goofy shorts at this in this time period. Got a narrator talking about how to be a gaucho, and what the differences are between the gaucho and but of course it's all just to set up the gags, because it's just a cartoon. It's just meant to be funny, and it's Goofy. I love Goofy. Goofy is always funny. Goofy will always make me laugh. So this is kind of the highlight of the film for me there. Actually, I'd say the second half of the movie is probably where it gets good. The second half, the two shorts in the second half of the movie are the better of the two, I think, because the one that follows is the Brazil. Watercolor of Brazil, I think they call it, or something like that. And that one it's another Donald Duck cartoon. But it starts off interesting in that you see, kind of like, if you're familiar with that Looney Tunes cartoon, Duck Amuck, where like the animator's pencil and paintbrush is like interacting with Daffy on the screen. There's a similar thing in which we see the paintbrush painting the scene, and then like morphing it and things like that, and painting things like you would see in Brazil. Um, and it's some very interesting stuff artistically going on there, and so it doesn't even like seem at first like it's going to be a Donald Duck cartoon, but eventually something they morph it into Donald Duck, and then they create on the screen we see the creation of the second of the three Caballeros, with Donald of course being the first, Jose Carioca. It's probably my favorite of the three. This is the Brazilian parrot, Jose Carioca, and he's there as he's a fan of Donald Duck, and he interacts, and he is taking him and showing him Brazil and dancing, and of course the paintbrush is filling in the background and the details while they're going on. But not a whole lot really happens. There's some like a little bit of samba dancing and things like that. So it's not really the funniest, but it is probably the Lake Titicaca of Donald Short earlier is funnier, but I think this one's more memorable. This one is kind of a preview, kind of a little taste of what they're going to be giving us in the next film, which is The Three Caballeros. The one that's actually titled after The Three Caballeros, which will introduce the third one. That's going to be the next time I cover a Disney classic, will be The Three Caballeros. But this short is kind of that without like going as crazy as they do in The Three Caballeros. It keeps it toned down a little bit. But it's kind of surreal with like the backgrounds getting like drawn in as they're doing it, and it's kind of just a lot of like local color with like the music and the dancing that Donald is trying out. So it's kind of a bit more memorable, I think, than the earlier shorts. So and that's it, because it's such a short film, and it's not even like the best collection of cartoon shorts. El Gaucho Goofy's a really good one though, but this is basically it's a time capsule is what it is. That's how it's most interesting, because of its the story. I mean you can see the story of its creation, or if you know the story of its creation, you can see it come through in there, because the South American themes is all because of this Good Neighbor program, the fact that it's this package film which uses the less ambitious animation that they do for their shorts, and isn't trying to do anything, and because it's so darn short, I mean, you can clearly see that this is the film that's kicking off an era in which Disney's not trying to be as ambitious, because they're so caught up in the war effort at this point that they're just trying to stay afloat. They're just trying to make cheaper films stay afloat. And the animation is still up to par. It's just not spectacular. It's the same kind of animation you would see in the shorts, but maybe nothing as spectacular as you would have seen in Pinocchio or Fantasia or even Bambi. But it's not like a lot of people probably don't even know this exists. They may have heard of The Three Caballeros, but they don't really know about Saludos Amigos. It's not the huge timeless. There's a timeless quality to all these classic Disney films, but it's not like this timeless thing that everybody remembers now. It's just kind of this time capsule. And it's a very interesting watch from that perspective. But again, it's not like the best collection of shorts. It's not something that you're going to put on all the time. But it is worth a watch, particularly if you know the history of that era. And on a side note, if you're also interested in the history of like the stuff that Disney was doing for the war effort at that time, if you can track it down, because it's out of print now, but there was a DVD set put out as part of the Walt Disney Treasures line, which was called On the Front Lines. And again, it's out of print. It's probably going to be prices are probably going to be kind of inflated if you find it on the secondary market. But if you can get it, that's a collection of a lot of the propaganda shorts, training films. There was one feature film they did, it was kind of a whole propaganda, which does not count in the Disney canon. It's called Victory Through Air Power, but that's part of that set too. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff. As with all the Walt Disney Treasures line, there's a lot of material with Leonard Maltin, just giving background on like what was going on, what the historical context of what they're presenting in this set is, and that's also very interesting. That's like telling you like what the other half of the studio was up to while this half of the studio was touring South America and putting together like Saludos Amigos and the Three Caballeros. So this again, we're not gonna for a while. We're not gonna see a lot of like the Disney classics that you know and love. This is gonna be some of the stuff that you may have picked. Like if you used to watch like the Disney Channel, you may have picked up like some of the shorts from these like out of context. And it has a like this. There's a certain charm to them, but it's not like the Disney that you first think of when you first think of Disney. But again, worth a watch. Just not something you're gonna pop in every time. All right, like, comment, subscribe, and that's a wrap.